Good morning, ladies. So today we are on day 2 of week 2. It is titled Ishmael and Isaac. Okay, so we have already read Genesis 15. We did that yesterday. So I'm not going to worry about, well, I'll read that one scripture. Genesis 15:13. Y'all, I passed out on my couch doing this study last night, and I woke up and I just couldn't believe that I fell asleep because I was so excited to get finished with it because it was really good. And I got to about halfway through the last page, and I don't remember anything after that. Okay, so Genesis 15, verse 13, and he said unto Abram, Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Okay. Abram rushes home to his wife and tells her what he's heard from God. Picture it with me. She's a senior citizen, and her husband comes home with the news that God is going to open her barren womb. Bless her elderly heart. That's a lot to take in with your Metamucil. Ishmael. Several years pass, and Sarai doesn't get pregnant. She decides the best plan is to take matters into her own hands, because isn't that always the best plan? No, it's not. But we do it. She tells Abram to father a child with her maidservant Hagar, because Hagar worked for Sarai. The child would be considered hers. As far as she was concerned, this was the only way God's promise could come to fruition. After all, how could a woman in her 80s have a baby? So Abram does exactly that, and Hagar conceives. While Hagar is pregnant, she feels mistreated by Sarai and decides to run away. After she's gained some ground, God speaks to her. Read Genesis 16, 7 through 15. What does God tell her about the son that will soon be born to her? So I'm going to try to read through this fast because I don't want y'all having to sit through 30-minute videos every time. I know that's long. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spoke unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai-roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. So, he tells her that he's going to be a wild man, his hand against every man's hand against him. He shall be a wild donkey of a man. Well, that's basically what every mom-to-be wants to hear, isn't it? At least it narrows the ideas for a baby shower theme. After Donkey Boy Ishmael is born, Abram hears from God again, and this time he's getting a name change. What was Abram's new name? Genesis 17, 1 through 8. I'm going to just let you guys read that because I want to try to cut these videos down a little. His new name is Abraham. God is remaining Abram reminding Abram of his promise. He is reinforcing the fact that no matter how unlikely it seems, the word will stand. Abram and Sarai will become parents. And I want to read that again. No matter how unlikely it seems, his word stands. Abram is now Abraham, meaning the father of nations, and he's been given some fresh hope. In the next few verses, it gets intense. So if you read Genesis 17, 9 through 14, if you want to pause the video, read that. You're more than welcome to. God tells him that he needs to circumcise all the boys. Ones that are working for him, ones that are his family, young, old, they all need to be circumcised. So she says, I know it's not an ideal moment for Abraham. God is telling him that not only does he need to be circumcised at his ripe old age, but so does every male in his family, including their slaves. We can't, unfortunately, skip over this part because once we get to the New Testament, we'll want to have this knowledge. Maybe I could kick us off with a question. Why in the world does God tell Abraham to be circumcised along with the rest of his family? She says there's no space here because it's rhetorical, but ponder on it. It seems like an odd request, but here's what you need to know. In Scripture, the flesh is used to describe our sinfulness as humans, and this procedure involves cutting away the flesh. It is therefore a symbol of their need for God and to be committed to him. Then God tells Abraham and Sarai now be called Sarah, and tells him they will have a son together. What does God tell Abraham about the boy? In verse 19, he tells him Sarai will be the one bearing the son, to name him Isaac. He will establish his covenant with him. Feel free, again, to pause and read if you need to. Abraham invites all of his male family members to a party they'll never forget. He makes sure that every one of them is circumcised, including his 99-year-old self. That sounds like a real fun party. Isaac. Shortly after this, 3 angels come to Sarah and Abraham's wife home. If I could get my tongue to work with me today. I keep getting tongue-tied. And announce that within a year, Isaac will be born. Sarah, who is out of their eyesight, but within range of their voices, begins to laugh. A couple of Bible stories make me smile when I read them, and this is one of them. Sarah giggles when she hears that she'll have a baby, but when the angel asks her why she laughed, she says, I didn't. The angel says, no, but you did laugh. Note to self. Lying to the God of the universe is probably not an effective life strategy. Exactly as the angels predicted, Sarah delivers a healthy baby boy several months later and names him Isaac, which means, you guessed it, laughter. One day, while Isaac is still an infant, Sarah finds Ishmael making fun of him, and it doesn't set well with her. Now she's got her own son, Hagar, and her kid aren't as useful anymore. So Sarah had them sent away. Remember I told you the story related to the news you might watch tonight? Let me lay down a piece of information to put into context. Ishmael is the father of the Arab people, and Isaac is the father of the Jews. You know, the two groups that still despise each other and battle over everything from land rights to religion. Yeah, them. I feel a little sheepish saying this, but I'll just throw it out there. When I understand things like this, a voice in the back of my mind whispers, wait, so this stuff is real? But yes, the anger and hatred between these two groups of people originated from one father and 2 mothers thousands of years ago. Admit it, it's a little fascinating. That is. I've never even thought of that. So then we get to the sacrifice of Isaac. After Hagar and Ishmael are sent away, things are quiet for a little while. The next time Isaac's name is mentioned, it is a doozy of a story. If you get a chance to read over what happens when Hagar leaves, the Hagar side of the story, it's pretty good. I remember doing a ladies meeting and studying learning about Hagar, and it's a pretty good story. Okay, so Genesis 22, 1 through 2. Let's go ahead and read that real quick. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. That is not, the story makes my heart hurt. Let's call this what it is, the perfect follow-up to the circumcision talk. You know that son I promised? The one I said I was going to father many generations, the one you love, yeah, him. Now I need you to go ahead and start walking in this direction, and I'll tell you exactly where to go. Once you get to that spot, you're going to kill him. Okay, page 45. Let's back up a bit, because this is important. What word in Genesis 22:1 used to describe what God is doing to Abraham? It says God tempted Abraham, or tested, is what that word is defined as in my Bible. Okay. Next, Angie says, in case an alarm is going off in your mind right now because you thought God didn't test people, let's take a minute to clarify something. Does God test us? Yep, he sure does. Does he tempt us? No, he doesn't. Is there a difference? Yes, and it's one I would love to go into more detail on, but for right now, let me just try and make it a little more clear. God tested Abraham and tests us because he knows we can, and hopefully will, make the choice that reflects our trust and love for him. He both sets us up to honor him and strengthen us in obedience. Tempting someone is more like inviting them into a situation where you want them to fail. If you are watching what you eat and I start waving a candy bar in front of you, that's tempting. I'm deliberately setting you up. God doesn't set us up. Satan, our adversary, does. That said, testing isn't easy. And this is a great example. God basically asked Abraham to perform a human sacrifice, never condoned before. And God also seems to be eliminating the outcome he has promised. Children coming from Isaac. Quite frankly, it seems like a pretty intense way of assessing someone's loyalty. But Abraham knows something. We also need to understand the character of God. So Abraham wakes up early, saddles his donkey, packs everything they'll need, rounds up some servants, heads out in the direction the Lord has told him to go. God never tells him where he's going. He always says, I'll tell you. He just has to trust and go, and we have to do that too. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, in Genesis 22:1, what does Abraham say in response to being called by God? He says, Behold, here I am. Hear me say this. He is obedient to a situation that doesn't make sense to him because he trusts God more than what he can see with his own eyes. Let me just add that to my Pinterest board real quick because I can use the reminder. We can sure learn a lot from Abraham, can't we? Anyway, Abraham gets to the mountain and God shows him the exact place to slaughter his son. Abraham binds Isaac up, raises his knife in the air to kill him, and at that very moment, God calls to Abraham. What's Abraham's response to God saying his name? Verse 11. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. Abraham's really good at telling God he's on board, isn't he? Have no fear. This one doesn't have a sad ending. Read what happens in Genesis 22, 12 through 14. I'm going to go ahead and read that. And he said, Lay not thy hand upon thy lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest the Lord, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. He provides a ram for a sacrifice instead of Isaac. Why? Why would a loving and kind God ask a man to kill his only son? That leads to another question. Why would God sacrifice his only son, his only begotten son, whom he loves? This is the first time the word love is used in Scripture, and it's to describe the love of a father that a father has for his son. Okay, then this next part, we're transitioning to Jesus right here in case you didn't pick up on that. Isaac had to carry his own wood up the mountain on his back until he came to a place of sacrifice. Sound familiar? It should, because approximately 2,000 years later, another man would do the same. In fact, he would do it on the same mountain range. I never, ever even thought of that. And it's so obvious, but I never did. And I read this and I thought, oh my. God would sacrifice his only begotten son, the son he loves, for a world of people who have made a habit of turning their backs on him. You know how hard it would be to sacrifice your child for people that, at all, but especially for people that didn't want you in their life and didn't. This story is one of those, like what Brother Rod was talking, that I read with my emotion. Anyway, did Abraham believe he was going to have to kill his son? Yes, he did. Based on Hebrews 11:19, go ahead and look it up. I'll wait here. And there's no shame in using the table of contents. If you want to pause and look that up, feel free. Well, I'll just go ahead and read it. Hold on, let me get to it. Hebrew 11:19. Let's see. According that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. So this is talking about how, if you go back to verse 17, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promise offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. And in a figure means in a figurative sense. So he knew. I mean, he was prepared to go all the way with it, thinking that, you know, God's promise has to stand. Maybe he would just raise him up from the dead. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to this, because I could go on and on about this story and how hard this would have to be if your heart wasn't, if you didn't trust God. And if you, we taught this in Sunday school, and we talked about how God wanted to see that he was above, you know, we have to put him above everything in our life, the people in our life, our kids, our spouses, our family. Jesus has to come first, and that's kind of what I feel like Abraham was showing God, was that even if he took his son, he was still, you know, he was going to serve him, which he knew that, you know, God's promise was in Isaac. So he believed that promise, and he believed that if God did take him, that he would somehow bring him back, or he would do something, because God can't break his promise. But I just think of Isaac and how confusing and scary that would have been for him. But that's probably because I have a little boy and I just can't wrap my brain around it. Anyway, let's go on. Okay. Did Abraham believe he was going to have to kill his son? Yes. Based on Hebrews 11:19, Abraham believed it. But I also believe he put stock in the reality of the situation, which was this: he knew he served a trustworthy God. As the story ends, we see Isaac and his father coming back down the mountain together. What does Abraham call that place? Jehovah Jireh. The God who sees, the God who provides. And indeed, he would. But, okay, so Angie says, but I'm getting ahead of myself and I don't want to do that. Let's call it a day and meet up again tomorrow. We've got miles to go, friend, but you've already covered more than you think you have. Sleep well, because tomorrow we're going to hang with a mister who majored in deception and went on to become one of the most important people in the pages of the Bible. I love a good story, don't you? Again, rhetorical, but I sure hope you said yes. So that is the end of day 2. And to me, that is a lot to take in. And so I'm going to say goodbye, and we will go over day 3 tomorrow. Love you, ladies. Bye.